In exams, you might be asked to calculate the square roots of numbers. The numbers might be large or small, and if you go through the usual way, it may be time consuming. In today's video, we are going to discuss how to calculate the square root of perfect squares in a flash. But before we go on, I would like us to define square roots and cite a few examples of them. A square root is a value you get when you multiply a number by itself. For example, 3 times 3 is equal to 9. Then the square root of 9 is 3. Today we'll be discussing how square roots are related to perfect squares. You should be familiar with the first 1 to 20 perfect squares, and if you're not, please check through my previous videos on where I dealt extensively on perfect squares. Now let's take a good look at the first 1 to 20 perfect squares. Stick with me. These numbers are actually the perfect squares. Why are they perfect squares? Because you can look for the exact square root of the numbers. You can look for the exact square root of 16. The square root of 16 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16, so they are called perfect squares. So from all indications, it shows that any number that ends with 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, and then 9 are perfect squares. So it's only a number that ends with any of these digits that are perfect squares. So if any number that ends with 2, 3, 7, and 8 are not perfect squares. So by the end, we mean the units of any number that is a perfect square must be either 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, or 9. So from what we have on the board, you will notice that the square of 1 and the square of 9 has 1 as the last digit. The square of 1, so it shows that 1 and 9, the square, when you square them, you must have 1 at the last digit. Also, the square of 2 and the square of 8, the square of 2 and 8 gives us 4 as the last digit. Then the square of 3 and the square of 7 gives us 9 as the last digit. The square of 4 and the square of 6 gives us what? Gives us 6 as the last digit. Then 5 gives us 5, and then 10 gives us a 0. So now, how do we use this? You must try to memorize this, because now it's easy to memorize. The square of 1 and the square of 9 must have 1 at the last as the units. The square of 2 and the square of 8 must have 4 as the units. The square of 3 and the square of 7 must have 9. The square of 4 and the square of 6 must have 6 as the units. The square of 5 must have 5, and the square of 10 must have a 0. Now, if you know that, this is the trick that can help us to look for square roots of perfect squares easily and very fast. Now, let's dive deeply into how this can be used to look for our perfect squares. Okay, now let's take some examples on how we can use this simple trick to look for the square root of perfect squares. So we have find the square root of 529. Remember, I told you for a number to be a perfect square, then it must either end with 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, or 9. So because this number here is a 9, then it shows that this is a perfect square. This is a perfect square. Alright, so now let's use the simple trick. So the first thing you got to do is that separate the numbers. Let this be 5 and let this be 29. Separate the two digits. So from all indications, we have 29. The number that gives us 29 when you take the square is either a 3 or a 7. So I'm going to write here 3 and 7. The next thing you got to do is that go to 5. Where do you have the number that is less than or greater than 5? The highest number you can get is 4. before 4 is 5, and the square root of this 4 gives us 2. So I'm going to put my 2 here. Then after 2 you have 3, so this will be 2 times 3 gives us 6. 6 is greater than 5, so we are going to take the smaller number, which is 3. So this gives us what? 23. So 23 times 23, so our answer is equal to 23, because 23 times 23 gives us 5, 2 and 9. Example 2, let's look for the square root of this number. So like I said, you are going to separate the number 2 digits this side and 2 digits this side. Okay, because it's ending with 4, it shows that this is a perfect square. Now you come back to this place. Any number that ends with 4 must definitely be the square of 2 or 8. So we're going to write our 2, and we'll also write our 8 for this one. Then you come to the 14. The last one we have for 14, this is 14. 14, after 9 you have 16, so 14 falls under this place. So therefore we are having the square root of 9, which is 3. So then use that 3 to times the next number, which is 4. That gives us what? 12. You see that 14 is greater than 12, so therefore our answer will be 30. We'll pick this. 8 definitely is greater than 2, so we'll pick 38. Square root of this is 38, because 38 times 38 gives us 144. Now let's move on to example number 3. We have the square root of 1764 separate into 2 digits. Okay, so now look for the number that when you square you must have a 4 at the end, and that number from our table is 2 and 8. 2 and 8. So we are bringing the 2 possibilities. That shows that any of these 2 numbers will be the last digit of the square root of this number. All right, so after that you move to the next one, which is what? 17. Okay, for the squares of numbers, the perfect squares of number, 17 is not a perfect square, but you get 17 immediately after 16. So this gives us 4 times 4. So we have 4, so it means our first digit is what? 4. Then multiply 4 by the next number. After 4, the next number is what? 5, which is 20. Then compare the 2 numbers, 17 and 20. 17 is less than 20, so 2 is less than 8. We are picking 2. It shows that 42 times 42 will actually give us 176 for you. I hope you learned something today, and if you do, please give me a thumbs up, just like this video, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so, and click on the notification bell so you get notified whenever my videos pop up. Thank you for sticking with me. See you next week. Bye.